Talofa everyone, welcome back to another episode of Behind the Lava Lava. We are Fia Poko, Samoan men who talk about topics surrounding the Samoan culture and life. I am your host, Michael Tan, and here with me are Spencer, T, Ati, and Johnny. To listen in on the latest episodes, be sure to follow us and subscribe on all social media platforms, including YouTube and Spotify. I hope you enjoy this episode. Now let's get straight to it. Today's topic, we're going to talk about Samoans bringing down other Samoans. For an example, if Samoans see other Samoans who are successful, they talk about them. I'm going to throw it out there to the crew on the podcast. What are you guys' thoughts on this?
I'll take a stab at it. So, yeah, on the surface level, I think it does exist, considering the fact that every culture or doesn't really have to be Samoan, but we always talk smack about anybody. And I know in the islands, if we have a family or Samoan family that all of a sudden, hey, they're doing really good for themselves, and we have other families too in the village, that look onto that, and they envy that, and then it gets to a point where maybe the other family is getting big-headed. They got the new cars, the new TV or something new. And then it's always, because in reality, we Samoans were very competitive. I know other cultures are too as well, but in our Samoan culture, we're very competitive. So when other families, especially in the village growing up, they have something nice, other families are like, they want to compete, against that. And the only thing they could compete on is trying to bring that other family down, with the stuff that they have. Considering the stuff that, where they're at that point. So, yeah, I think it does exist. Just like I said, growing up in my village, there's tons of a situation like that does happen. And I don't know about other, but I know it does exist at some level.
I find that point interesting, Ati, because a good correlation to that is when we have the Samoan Falaves, right? With the Sama Kupe, it starts to portray the different families of who brings the most, who brings this, who shows their love more. And that tends to nurture this competitive side with families. And then it carries into all aspects. And then now people are constantly, and I think that a lot of it has to do with just jealousy. Talking, and I know this is, I'm speaking mostly on the negative side, because there are groups of Samoans out there that are very welcoming, especially in a community sense, whether it's here or in Samoa. But then, you find yourself running more into the negative aspect of it. People, there's a lot of families that are, you get it, you go to the store and then you're like, oh, did you see those Samoans over there? They look like they were just mean mugging me the whole time. Or and especially if they speak Samoan and they don't think you speak Samoan. So then you'll hear stuff like, and then it's a constant critique in the negative. And so, I mean, I think it's a lot more than the positives, but yeah, that's from what I see.
What Johnny mentioned, that reminds me of the instance where a couple of Samoans were talking smack behind this Pa'alangi's back, and then the Pa'alangi turned around and spoke Samoan because he served his mission in Samoa. It's a reminder for our audience, be careful what you say around other people, because you don't know they understand you, right? And you shouldn't be talking smack about other people, especially when it comes to racial terms.
Wasn't that the beauty of knowing another language, is so you can talk smack to people in public? At least I always use that excuse to my brothers. It's like, oh, okay, say it in Samoan.
It's funny because we talk smack, and then all of a sudden we find out they speak our language, and they're like, oh, we didn't mean it, kind of say faces type stuff. So yeah, I know that happened to my my mother-in-law, man. It was a story that my wife was saying. She said that they were walking toward, I think, the commissary or something, and she was saying something about there was a guy, I think he was putting it in his groceries, And I guess she said something like "Malo," you know, and then I guess the guy turned around and said, "Hey, Malo, I soy fool." You know, he was speaking nice, but she kind of, you know, was kind of embarrassed and then kind of saved face and just smiled and said, you know, apologize. Yeah.
So, like, my experiences with this purely anecdotal. Like I've mentioned before, coming from the exotic 29 Palms, like my Samoan community that I grew up with was a very small but intimate one. It was mostly my family and people that I knew from church. You know, 29 Palms not a very big town, and so, but because of the Marine base there, we did get a good steady influx of Marines coming in and out, and Samoans moving in, and their families coming with them and whatnot. And so my exposure to Samoan culture was this, like I said, it's a very small microcosm to pull from. That's all I knew. And so it was mainly, I was very surprised as I grew up and moved on to see how different Samoan culture is outside of my little desert town. And so I have my own personal examples, but even talking to some of my cousins that I grew up with and hearing challenges that they ran into. So I had one cousin who was in the military and got stationed overseas and whatnot, and he was trying to connect the dots. And sometimes it's a very welcoming thing to find out who else is Pali around you, who else is Samoan around you. But he was trying to affiliate with some Samoans who were, I believe they were homegrown from the island. And when they found out my cousin was raised stateside, could not speak the language, etc., and he felt very ostracized by them. Like, and like I clarify, these are all anecdotal examples. I know that this isn't all Samoans, because I've had the opposite happen where I go to military areas and they recognize me being part Samoan and I get invited into everything. But there is the occasion where the opposite can happen, where sometimes Samoans might keep each other down by ostracizing those who they don't consider authentic Samoan, which is another subject that we've covered on the podcast before. What really surprised me is I had other family members who raised in American Samoa come to the States, and they were like 7-9 years old, and then they were raised on the mainland for a while, and in their late teenage years go back to American Samoa so that they can complete high school there. And because of that brief gap in time that they were away from the island, they went back and they were actually labeled Palangis, or they were considered not real Samoans anymore, even though they were literally born on the island. Samoan was their first language. Like, they came to the States having to learn how to speak English, and, you know, and heritage wise, like 100% Samoan. But because of that brief gap in time that they were in the mainland, they were ostracized when they came back. And I think it's just it's a thing that people tend to do, is like we tend to, and not just as Samoans, but just human beings in general, like Atu was saying, we have a tendency to find the different thing and to point it out. Now, whether that's going to be people just having fun with what they find different, or if they have some poor intentions pointing that out, it varies. But I've had very good experiences meeting other Samoans, but you do see these occasional times where we tend to ostracize each other and hold each other down.
So I don't know if you guys noticed, but in general, Samoans are jokesters, and I believe joking around, telling jokes, that's one of our coping mechanisms in dealing with things that happen in our lives. You get beat, you get insulted, and it's a way for us to hide behind our insecurities when we attack others, when we say things behind other people's backs. So I believe that's one of the reasons why we put each other down, is because we want what they have, or simply because jealousy.
So just a side little story. Shout out to JP King, he used to be on the podcast, still an extended member of the podcast, I would say. But Bobby, rest in peace, Bobby, and Alex, you know, they'd be like, man, why is JP so excited to meet Samoans? Just just a Samoan, and that's what I loved about JP, man. No matter what, even though he grew up in the islands, whenever he would meet another Samoan, Marine or just civilian, anyone, he would get excited. And same thing with me too. I'd get excited just to know that, I met a fellow Polynesian out here in the States and military base away for family. But all right, to move on, we are jokesters. A lot of people use that as a coping mechanism, but the judgment, the critique, do you think part of that starts in the home? Like, we are competitive as Samoans, and I'm sure it's universal across all cultures, but you got the parents always comparing the kids to their face, the other kids in the neighborhood or community, like, oh, why can't you be like so-and-so and this and that? Do you think part of the constant bringing down of one another also stems from that?
For me, joking was a coping mechanism that I used just to fit in the group. You have to be hard-headed and thick-skinned to be able to take jokes from other people, especially if you're joking around with Samoans. Their jokes can hit hard if you're not if you're not ready for it, and you have to be able to read people and understand that they're joking, simply joking, because on a level you're able to connect through humor. It can be dirty humor, it can be clean humor.
Yeah, just get back on that, on the question, and it's true, because I believe in the village or in the community, the number one family that I believe Samoan parents use to compare is the whaiwhiau, the pastor's kids, or they're like, why see the pastor's kids, they're doing really good. Why can't you, all the stuff. So it does start within the family dynamic, and I think as our generation is moving forward from the traditional generation, because I think the reason why it still kind of exists is because of the way our parents were brought up, from a strict area, generation, and then kind of moved towards us, it kind of raised us based off of what their parents taught them, so, and I think that's what it is, it's just very, very competitive, trying to compare that comparison between other kids, and it's really difficult to try to control something like that, considering the way our parents, or at least my parents, or for in general, how they were brought up. So yeah, it does exist. So, and I think that's where this level of competitive comes, and then it gets to the point where we do jokes, but in reality, like, some jokes are made, but there's like a stab in the back, with that joke. So there's different levels of joke, in our society of, Samoan society. There's that level, subsurface level, and then when you get drunk, then that's where the real truth comes out. So yeah, it does exist.
I find that interesting because I believe that for a lot of the Samoan families, each family has that ideal, what they define success. For some, it might be for example, in my family, primarily on my mom's side, it was schooling. Growing up in Samoa, it was schooling. But on my dad's side, it was more cultural stuff. Who holds what titles you're entitled to per family, per blood, per village. And so, I mean, in my dad's eyes, success was more of a cultural aspect, or sports. And then my mom's side was all schooling. And I find it was similar to a lot of other Samoan families. And I'm pretty sure it encompasses every other culture and every other aspect. Everybody can draw similarities to it. But I know for a lot of the reasons why we all have that ideal success, and as we grow up, it gets mentioned a lot. We're talking about comparisons, comparing you to the so-and-so's kids, the whaiwhiau's kids. I know my mom's side is predominantly LDS, so a lot of it had to do with mission and school. I could probably tell you every single one of my cousins or relatives or people in the village that graduated or was planning to go on a mission or something like that. And so that's how it was for the longest time. And then, you grow up and then you realize that everybody finds their own success in their own way. And it could have been a bleed effect to where we gravitate towards being animalistic or being hateful to other people who have achieved your ideal success, or encouraging to people that's of the same group. So like, if you believe that being a doctor is the height of success, then you'll notice more doctors, you'll notice more. And so when it comes to the Samoan community, you tend to either find your idols or you critique those who come close to what you define as success. And so, yeah, like schooling was always a big thing growing up for me. It was everybody wanted to be successful. You had to have the degree, bare minimum. And I got the degree. I don't use the degree. I drive a truck, and I make more money driving a truck. And now that I'm older and I found my success another way, I'm fine with it this way. But growing up in that stigma, it could lead to things. I mean, I'm not saying this is a blanket statement that defines why Samoans like to put each other down, but I mean, could be a reason.
Just to piggyback on that. So I think the other important, because you touched on it, the Matai, on your dad's side, the culture. And I think it's also because, our last names, that's one of the biggest things, because I know when I mentioned, hey, the comparison to the Whaifi'au, and then you also have that other, the bad family in the village or community, where there could, why don't be like X family, their kids are not doing good or whatever, be like this family. So I think it's kind of like that mixed up level where that comparison, and then, they grow up and then just kind of have that idea of that success and failure. And, that's where, we grow up or have that Samoa bring other Samoans down, is because, hey, my last name, I don't want my last name to be dragged, because it's like this, like we're pretty much carrying our ancestors, our family name, so we don't want to degrade the last name. But so it becomes a competitive thing, like Sa Migi or Sa whatever, their family, especially we see it in Sualevai. What's the number one thing, in Sualevai, if we go to Sualevai, is the food, man. No matter how much money or how much stuff, culture goes in there, if that family doesn't provide enough food, man, that's the talk, man. Like, we're bringing that family down because, hey, they didn't bring enough food, or if like within the family they don't have enough song on meal for like the Sualevai. Oh, then we bring that family down because, hey, they didn't put up like $1,000 for so-and-so's wedding or or funeral, or hey, it could be the church stuff. That family didn't put their tithings in for this month. So it's just like there's different complexities of talking smack in our culture, and it just, and I think it happens within the family household. So yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's a funny thing that you brought up food, because I've been in events and families that are very concerned about the food, especially if they're trying to serve their guests. It's a very big thing. So if you don't want angry Samoans, make sure you have a lot of food, and make sure you have enough food that they can go twice.
Yeah, I don't know how many times growing up I was told this. I'm pretty sure a lot of us were told this statement in Samoan. Don't do anything to disrespect my name. And it was a big thing to me, especially for my dad. My dad was big into cultural stuff. And he was like, you carry my name. Just, I don't care what you do. Just don't do anything that would disrespect my name. And so, I mean, I still carry that. And I do the same thing to my kids now. And I was like, hey, number one rule, you guys all should know. As my kids were growing up, I was like, I don't care what you do. You can be with the alphabet community. You can be a lawyer, or you can be a beggar. I don't care what you do with your life, as long as you do it with passion and don't do anything to disrespect my name. That's it. And it could put pressure on adolescents, but at the same time, It's just something that it's become a tradition.
Yeah, that aspect was very ingrained in us. Like for my mom, like one of the earliest examples I remember is it was the biggest deal to get me and my brother to look presentable for church. We had to have like our pants and shirts ironed, hair combed, and all this stuff because I remember my mom would say straight out, like, if they see you looking sloppy, they're gonna think, "Oh, what is their mom doing? What a terrible mom these boys must have." And that carried over into lots of things. But everywhere I go, that was ingrained in me and my brother and my sisters is don't bring shame to the name. Do not like present yourself poorly because that's a reflection on me. Yeah, that's definitely been. We definitely experienced that aspect of the culture.
Yeah, it's funny we have all these the same stories because even in the way when I was brought up, the same way. So and you go back to it and then you think about it. Why did we have all this stuff going on in family? And that's because our parents knew that other Samoans talk. So that's where I kind of like got the idea of like, man, when I was growing up too, school was very important. Just go back on Johnny, school was very important. So, and my mom's thing was always, we don't fight, the other families. We fight them by using a pencil, the pincala. We'll show X family that, this is how we do it. So in school, it was like, that was my drive, just to compete, strive to be better, even going in high school, trying to be better, playing sports and all that stuff, just to shut the other folks that's been talking smack on at least my mom, because my mom was born in Western Samoa, and people that were born in Western Samoa was kind of looked down upon too in some ways. But so to prevent that, I competed within myself with other kids in the village, just to, hey, this is my upbringing and the competitive lifestyle, just to shut the naysayers out there, especially in the village for that matter.
Yeah, that reminds me of my mom, but it was more focused on church stuff. Like, she did not want her name dragged down, especially when it comes to church stuff, and if we're behaving in church or we're not living up to the standards. Because her standards for church, when it comes to church, it was pretty high. So we had to live the expectations. Which is why I think at this point in my adult life, with my critical thinking skills, I don't. Religion to me, it's a complicated thing. I don't dive straight into that head first. I have to step back and think on some of the practices in religion in general.
So just kind of go ahead, T.
So I was gonna say Johnny brought up the best point as far as this topic goes. Perceived the idea of success, and when it comes to this, it's the person who made the achievement, their perceived idea of success for them, and also the hater on the side who didn't achieve it, who's watching this person achieve what they wanted, so then they're hating. So with that being said, we also got to take in consideration telling the truth and sounding like a hater, because I'll be honest, as a young kid, I had homies that rap and they sucked, but I was hyping the heck out of them. I was like, oh man, my boy's doing it big. But I was over here trying to build their cred like my opinion meant something. And when people were trying to tell me that they sucked, I was like, nah, y'all just haters. But truthfully, they sucked. So there's that, just pure honesty on everything. But Johnny's point, before anything else, I just wanted, that was really good.
I got kind of another example on that same subject. Is going back to everybody's favorite cousin, The Rock. I remember there seemed to be kind of a divisive topic among Samoans is when he rolled out with the Hobbs and Shaw movie. Now, I don't know how everybody here felt about that movie, but for me, like, I saw it, and the way that I saw it was, here's the guy who's probably the most famous Samoan guy in the world, and gauging success on, like, as far as getting his name out there, getting his money, etc. And the guy is Afakasi. And I thought it was really cool that this guy, despite being of two peoples, is using his platform to give a little shine to his Samoan heritage. Now, that being said, I know a lot of Samoans that are like, man, that movie was corny. Like, especially the depiction of
they
island
thrashed him,
life.
dude.
They
They
thrashed
thrashed him,
Yes, sir.
making fun of his him attempting to speak the language. I was like, how disrespectful is that?
Exactly. And so for me, I was like, this is one of those things where we got to be careful how we ostracize each other, because he is of two peoples. Now, if he leaned the other way and decided to only rep his dad's side, y'all be mad still. You'd be like, oh, he thinks he's too good to be Samoan and to rep us. Now, look, I'm not defending whether that was a good movie or not. That's personal taste and all that. I could appreciate, though, the gesture that he was using his platform to try to put some shine on his culture. And all I got to say is, if you think that movie was corny, just remember, this takes place in the Fast and the Furious universe. All those movies are corny. Like, that was not off brand for that movie. Point is, he just said, yeah, let me take this already cheesy concept. I'll throw in the Samoan shine on it. But it's still on brand for what those movies are like. So that's all I had to say on that. But we got to be careful how we ostracize each other, pull each other down, because we stand to benefit from those depictions as well. And we don't want to like ostracize each other to the point that you take a lot of us, as we go into the future, a lot of us are going to be mixed race. We want to push each other out of the culture. We want to keep embracing us and each other, keep each other in the culture, because we do stand the risk of basically losing people. Because I even have family members that may not even claim their island side because they felt ostracized when they went out to the world.
Yeah, and this applies to sports athletes and MMA fighters and podcasters, right? There are constantly haters out there trying to put people down. You know, if athletes and fighters lose, who's first to put them down is their own people who were a minute ago cheering for them. So that's my thoughts on that.
I do want to shout out all the other people that it's just like how we always notice the bad things in life. We never appreciate everyone else, the 90% of y'all that are doing the right thing, supporting the cause, the movement, proud of your roots and heritage, and uplifting those around you in your community. So, I mean, I still got to give shout out to those, because majority of those people are the ones that are holding the rest of everybody else together, so kudos to you, pat on your back and everything, all that jazz.
All right, thank you everyone for tuning into our episode. We appreciate you all for taking the time to join us. If you could, please share your experience with us, or even suggest a topic that you would like for us to talk. Thank you for joining in. Catch you next time. Tofa soifua.